The prairie winds howled through the barren land, carrying dust and silence across the endless horizon. A lone cowboy, weary from days of riding, spotted something unusual by the creek. A woman lying half-collapsed, her body bruised and her leg bleeding. Her dark braids and worn clothing told him she was Apache, and danger clung to that fact. Yet something in her eyes, half-conscious and desperate, froze him where he stood. He knew the risks of helping her, but the thought of leaving her there to die was something his heart could not accept. The cowboy dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on dry grass. His only horse snorted, restless, as though sensing the weight of the decision ahead. Kneeling beside her, he whispered, "You're safe now." She could barely speak, but her cracked lips formed a single word in her tongue. Water. He gave her his canteen, lifting her head gently. As she drank, her trembling hand gripped his arm, and he knew she had not much strength left to walk. His mind wrestled, leave her or risk everything by taking her home. But his horse was more than an animal. It was his partner, his lifeline. Across the desert plains, without it, survival would be nearly impossible. Still, when the woman tried to move and fell back with a cry, his heart clenched. He took a deep breath, removed the saddle, and lifted her carefully onto the horse's back. "He's yours now," he whispered to her, patting the horse's neck. With his rifle slung over his shoulder, he began the long walk back toward his cabin, leading her to safety. The journey was brutal. The cowboy walked for miles under the scorching sun, his boots tearing against sharp stones. Thirst clawed at his throat, but he pressed on, watching the horse carry her fragile form step by step. Each time she stirred, he reassured her softly, though he wasn't sure she even understood his words. By nightfall, they reached his cabin, a weathered wooden shelter on the edge of the prairie. He laid her inside on his cot, cleaned her wounds with what little supplies he had, and sat beside her until sleep overtook them both. Morning brought no peace. As the cowboy stepped outside, his breath caught in his chest. From the ridge across the plains, riders appeared, dozens of them, their spears and bows glinting under the rising sun. Apache warriors. His heart pounded. He knew at once they had come for her. The ground trembled as nearly 70 warriors descended, surrounding his small cabin. The cowboy clenched his rifle, but deep inside, he knew resistance was hopeless. This was the end. The leader dismounted first, tall and stern, his expression unreadable. The warrior's eyes were cold, full of suspicion and anger. The wounded woman emerged slowly from the cabin, leaning against the doorway. Gasps and murmurs rose from the warriors as they recognized her. She was not just any woman, but the daughter of their chief. The cowboy's blood ran cold. He expected death to follow, his sacrifice of the horse meaningless in the face of tribal fury. But then something unexpected happened. The young woman raised her voice in Apache, weak but commanding. She told them of the cowboy's kindness, how he gave his only horse and walked miles in the desert to save her life. The warriors listened intently, their expressions shifting. The chief, her father, turned his gaze to the cowboy, studying the dirt on his clothes, the cracks on his lips, the exhaustion in his stance. He had risked everything, and even a proud Apache leader could not ignore such an act of honor. Silence hung heavy until the chief stepped forward. He extended his hand in a gesture both foreign and profound. The cowboy hesitated, then lowered his rifle and grasped it firmly. A bond was formed in that moment, not of blood, but of respect. The warriors bowed their heads slightly as their chief declared the cowboy a friend of their people. Relief flooded his chest, though disbelief lingered. He had prepared for death, yet here he stood alive, embraced by those he once feared. In the following days, the Apache camped near his land, protecting his ranch from roaming bandits who often preyed on lone settlers. The cowboy shared meals, With them, learning pieces of their language, watching children play around his cabin as if it had always been safe ground. The young woman healed steadily, her gratitude shining in every glance she cast his way. Though words between them were limited, something unspoken grew stronger each day: trust, admiration, and perhaps something more. Nights were long under the prairie stars. The cowboy often sat by the fire with the chief, who spoke in measured tones. Through broken translations, he learned of the Apache struggles, of their fight for survival as settlers spread deeper into their lands. He listened quietly, understanding for the first time the depth of their pain. The chief, in turn, began to understand the cowboy's loneliness, the empty years of living without family or community. Two men from different worlds, bound by one act of mercy. The woman often joined him on walks near the creek. She laughed softly when he stumbled over Apache words, and he smiled when she tried to mimic his English. Her spirit, though once wounded, now shone with resilience. One evening she gave him a small beaded bracelet, a gift made by her own hands. He held it as though it were the most valuable treasure in the world. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was something deeper, something that neither of them could deny, but not everyone approved. Some warriors distrusted the cowboy, whispering that no outsider should walk among them. Tension brewed until one night, a group of young braves confronted him near the corral. "You are not one of us," one spat. The cowboy stood tall, his hand resting on the rifle, but he did not raise it. Before blood could be spilled, the chief himself appeared, silencing them with a single command. "He gave his horse for my daughter," the chief said. "That is worth more than words." The days stretched into weeks. The cowboy's cabin was no longer a place of solitude, but of community. Children played in the fields, women brought food, and warriors kept watch from the ridges. The cowboy, once alone in the vast wilderness, found himself surrounded by a family he never expected. The Apache woman often stayed by his side, her presence filling the emptiness in his heart. Each moment drew them closer, though neither dared to speak the truth their eyes revealed. Finally, the day came when the warriors prepared to return to their lands. The chief stood before the cowboy, his daughter at his side. He spoke solemnly, declaring that the cowboy's act of sacrifice had earned him not only their friendship, but also a place in their family should he choose it. The woman reached for his hand, her eyes full of both hope and fear. The cowboy, overwhelmed, nodded slowly. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a man surviving the plains. He was a man who belonged. As the warriors rode away, a few remained behind, leaving. The woman with him by her own choice. She smiled, her hand tightening around his. The prairie wind carried their silence, but within it was a promise of something lasting. The cowboy gazed at the horizon, knowing the land was still harsh, the future uncertain. Yet with her beside him, he felt stronger than ever. He had given away his only horse, but what he had gained was far greater: love, respect, and a family he never dreamed he would have.